Hi Raymond, how are you? You doing all right?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
Yeah, well, I'm excited about this conversation. So
Me
I'm
too.
really excited. But before we talk about any of that money stuff, when was the last time you wore a suit?
Oh my God, I maybe the first year that I was working for myself. So that's what, 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I still I don't mind a suit. I haven't worn a tie for about 10 years, but
Okay.
um, but I remember when I first got started my career in retail banking, I had the worst polyester suits. It was a corporate uniform, polyester suit ever. And I think that might have put me off of wearing suits every day for life, to be honest.
Oh my God. Well, actually, no, actually thinking about it, I did wear a suit about 3 years ago because I hosted an event and I in London and I had clients, all my clients come to it, and they gave me so much grief because I wore a suit when I'd never worn a suit when I'd been to see them, and I actually dressed up with a suit and tie and everything else. That just can't shake the former life. Couldn't shake the former lifestyle. Could
Do
not
you, do,
shake
you,
it.
do you reckon? Do you reckon there's? I mean, certainly when I work with my clients, they're more worried about our relationship than
Yeah.
me wearing a certain tie and a level of comfort in terms of the relationship. Do you reckon the days of a good suit and tie are done, or do you reckon that for some people it's still a thing?
No, I think it in some quarters it will still be the thing to do, but I think more often than not, just looking smart is more than enough. And I think you're right. The clients are just more interested in that you actually know what you're doing and you actually can form a relationship with them rather than having the smart suit and walking and looking the part. But if you can't do, I always say this to any young finance person, forget about what, in some ways, if you can't form a relationship, it doesn't matter whether you look like you can know what you're doing,
Yeah,
it's not going to work. So no, I think there's still quarters where it'll be, especially in things like the city and that. But I think most businesses now are kind of like not business owners not particularly worried. I think it's really interesting if you work with business owners who work with corporates or big industry, because in some ways they are expected to go and dress in that kind of environment,
yeah.
and then sometimes find it a little bit difficult to actually dress, almost come back to who they are because they're so used to working in that environment and with people who are dressed up like that in
I
suits
mean,
and everything else.
it's weird. I mean, years and years and years ago, when I first was involved in corporate, I had a manager who told me always wear a suit because
Mm-hmm.
then you're never going to be underdressed.
Yeah.
Um, but I think if somebody's going to come along, sit down with us, talk about stuff that's deeply personal, sharing aspects of their life, I don't want that to I want that to be a professional relationship, but I don't want it to be too formal, if that makes sense. It's interesting to get the balance, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think we all recognize when people show up and look different to the way that they actually are. And I think that actually puts a lot of, well, we know from, if you look at the tech space, isn't it, where everyone's kind of West Coast American blazers and shirts. If you actually turned up with a suit, they'd actually wonder what you were doing. So
Yeah,
I think we have to be a little bit more savvy in recognizing the cultures or who we're working with, and especially we do a lot with, you say, do a lot with families and a lot with we in some and a lot in the home, where actually people are like, just they don't want, in some ways don't want the work to walk in the door. What
yeah.
they want is that person to walk in the door who can talk to them.
I mean, I haven't sort of come to work in my dressing gown yet, despite a year of lockdown. So that I'm seeing that as a good sign.
So
And
you're not
on that
sitting
note,
wearing your shorts then when
well,
you're
I'm
on
not.
Zoom.
I'm actually. I mean, I'm in the home office today, but I'm actually wearing trousers, which is good. And on that note, I'm moving swiftly away from that particular point. The first thing I want to talk to you about is financial education, because it's a particular passion of mine. I mean, certainly through the work we do at Savello, we sponsor a classroom of kids every year. Funny enough, we didn't do it during lockdown because of
Mhm.
the logistics of it. But we've got the budget to sponsor a classroom of kids every year through a financial education program, which we pay for. where we go into a local school, work in partnership with the London Institute of Banking and Finance, and deliver a financial education program at the school. And it's a weird one, because I know that when I was growing up, I knew nothing about money, and I just got lucky that I was involved in an environment where I could learn really quickly. How about you?
No, I would say not a great deal of financial education when I was growing up.
Do you think financial education works?
I do, and it's interesting, because I would say that someone like my dad wasn't that. So he said to me when I started earning money, put 10% away every month from your paycheck, you won't miss it. But never really followed through on actually doing that for me. He left it up to me, which is fine, and I never did it, so that was my choice. But there's an element of, I think they knew it in the past, but how it was enacted. Because if you think about some of the ways household bills were run, you had the rent pot, the shopping pot. So it was really good financial education, and actually, in some respects, in that guy, but not necessarily was that passed on directly to us. It was almost like if you saw it and you noticed it, you kind of picked it up. But I just wonder if we ever talked about it. But I think it does work. I think it does work.
I think part of the challenge is money is such a taboo, isn't it? You know,
yes.
Culturally, the challenge we've got is and it's interesting when we look at the world at the minute. You know, we have more adult grown-up conversations about some really important subjects, mental health being one. I mean, we're recording this on the week of Mental Health Awareness Week, really important subject, but we're still not there yet with the subject of money. It's still one of those taboos that we talk about. And certainly when I was growing up, when I think about sort of the conversations my mum and dad had about money, it was either whispered or very loud, as in arguing about it. So what do you learn from that? You know, you learn that it's either a secret or it's something to be annoyed about, not that you can have a rational conversation. And I think to a certain extent, we need to break that taboo with financial education. What would you say about how parents play a part, though?
Well, it starts with us, with our children, to be honest. And I did a video a few months ago where the way we do with the kids here, the boys here, is so because we've got a Far Eastern bend to us with my wife, Chinese New Year, they get little red packets of money from lucky money from from the rest of the family, and we get them to write down what they spend. Now, and it's their choice what they spend their money on. One of my kids puts some of it away.
Right.
The older one does not. And we say to him, it's your choice. We are saying that we would suggest that you do. And I'm going back to, so we do other things so that they do put money away. But this is their choice. This is their like birthday money. Yeah, they can do it. So we actually get them on every time they get money is put some away, and then you can spend what the rest of it's on.
Yeah.
And that is your choice. And everything they spend, so whether they have I was going to say the Henry card or anything like that, it's their money that's going on it. So if they spend something and they don't get the value out of it, well, you know, they spent the money. And especially when everything's digital, they kind of, once it's spent, you can't get it back. So we do it with everything they do, and they have the choice to do what they want to do.
I think the models like Go Henry are really interesting, right? Because they do sort of digitize a lot of those habits that we learn really well from. There's like, you know, pocket money for hard work and all of that sort of stuff. I think there's some real value in those sort of teaching our kids those sort of habits. And certainly, you know, Charlotte, Sophie we haven't done it with, but Charlotte had a Go Henry account and learnt about sort of money from that. But it's also giving them the responsibility to make their own buying decisions.
Yeah.
By, you know, my kids are really, really good at hoarding money. And it's just expecting me to pay for everything so that they can keep their little pots. And part of the education that we're going through is actually in real life, you haven't got somebody who's going to do that. And it's interesting because I have this conversation with some of my younger clients. You know, there's
Mhm.
always that balance of wanting to be a good dad, in terms of making sure your kids don't go without. And, you know, there's an argument
Yeah.
I'd agree with, say that that's not about material stuff,
Mhm.
but, you know, go with that from a sort of stuff perspective, but also empowering them with a bit of autonomy and a bit of
Yeah.
responsibility for their own stuff, and getting that balance right is tough sometimes.
Yeah. But well, give you an example. We've had well, it's the same example twice with my oldest, with Ben. He wants a VR headset.
Yeah.
The first time round, it was him and his brother. He was going to borrow some money from his brother to buy it, and it was well, you can do that. That's fine, but you do realise that when William wants to play with it, he's going to ask you. The silence between the parents is amazing. It's like, oh my god, I'm going to let. And I'm thinking that's not going to work. The second time round, he came up to me and he's like, I can afford it. I said, I no doubt you can afford it. No doubt with your money and everything else, you can afford it. I found it. I'm gonna buy it. Okay. I said, let me just ask you a question. He went, okay. So when will you play it? Because not that you can afford it or you can earn it, right? I said, but where's the time to play it? I said, you go to school 5 days a week. There's no games in the evenings. You do tennis on the weekends. You do other stuff with us on the Sunday. You
Yeah.
school, and it's like, and you can. And I said, I think I've got it down to about Sunday afternoon is probably the consistent time you've got free. And you can see him going, and you could see the kind of frustration and everything else. But it's like the money's one part of this, and the education about the money is you can earn it. You've done this, great. But the flip side of it, how you spend your money in relation to what time you have available to you, and actually linking the fact that actually the thing that's most valuable to you is how much time you have. And you could just see this 14-year-old just kind of go from frustrated to, well, that's a good point, actually. And
Yeah.
today we have no VR headset.
But again, it's that education of time as a value as well. You know,
Yep.
like we don't learn the value, and as business owners, we need to develop that skill because our time is valuable, and we need to make really important decisions about what to do for free, what to do for the potential to develop and grow our business,
Yep.
and what to do to earn to earn a living. And it's getting that balance right that nobody teaches us the skills. Even, I mean, you know, we're both professional people, Raymond. I'm a really good financial planner. Nobody taught me how to run a business when I started
No.
Stabello. And it's that sort of skills that are interesting to learn. And actually, I think teaching kids entrepreneurship is actually a good place to start. I'll just tell you one quick story. A few years ago, we're driving. We're on a holiday in France, and Charlotte says to me, "Dad, can we have a dog?" And I was like, I didn't want to say no because she's I mean, she was 8 at the time, super sweet. Sophie's like in a car seat. She's a baby. Cassie and Charlotte were been lobbying me to get this dog for ages, and I thought, right, here's a smart idea. I'm not going to say no, but I'm going to put some sort of really ambitious targets on this financially so that it will never happen. So it's right, okay. So if we buy a dog, I want you to make sure that you can buy the dog, cover the first year's worth of vet's bills, and make sure. And let's say that's £500, right?
Yeah.
If you can sort of accumulate that amount of money in a by the end of the year, and I think this was at the start of the year, you can go and get the dog, right? So I was like, I thought, Raymond, I thought I was home free, right? I thought this is never going to happen. I'm never going to need to worry about this dog again, and that's fine. I mean, just to add a bit of flavour to the story, the conversation started at Christmas time because Cassie and I didn't think we could have any more kids when Charlotte was born because of some medical issues that was going on. And uh, uh, 8 years later, Charlotte says, Dad, you know what I really want for Christmas? I want a little sister. And I was like, okay, not going to happen. And then literally sort of 9-10 months later, Sophie was born, right? So the following Christmas, when Charlotte asked for a dog, and I said, that's not going to happen, she went, I know, but you said that about the sister, didn't you? So I was really like I was really against the wall. So I set this financial limit, 500 quid. If you achieve it, then we can do it.
Yeah.
And she baked cakes. She car washed. She really put the effort in and got to all the Christmas money, all the birthday money, everything went into this collective pot. And she got to the 500 quid. And I don't know whether I was proud of her, annoyed at me for setting a low limit. I should have said 1,000, shouldn't I? Annoyed at me for setting a low limit, but super proud of her from what she'd learned on that journey about, having a goal, having a target, having a clear aim, and then working in an incremental way towards it with like sort of doing different stuff to get there.
Yeah.
And so I think some of the lessons we teach our kids, good and bad, are sometimes accidental like that, aren't they?
They are. And it's really interesting the way when you talk about a story, that it really does show, and a lot of business owners could really learn from this one. When you set yourself a financial target and you want something, what you do is you go back to how you can earn that money. Now that is learning new things, doing things, learning things, improving your skills and your knowledge and building on your experience, because that's what kids are really good at. If you set them a target and you say to them, right, that's where we want to go, they go back and they go, right, how do I achieve that? And if I don't know how to achieve it, if I've never washed a car in my life, I'm going to find out how to wash a car. Yeah. Because it's that which generates the money.
But how much of what holds us back is about mindset?
Yes.
How much it holds us back is that phrase, I can't afford it. Not how can I afford it, potentially, but I can't afford it. Because then you're just putting a block on that aspiration immediately, aren't you?
Yeah.
And maybe reframing it in a way of, like, I can't afford it now, but how can I plan for it so that I can do it in the future?
Yes.
Then allows you to take those incremental actions and move forward. But as business owners, I think, particularly as business owners where family is important, for me, I firmly believe that having a really clear set of values that move our business forward is fundamental. What values drive your business?
Well, the obvious one is balance, because it's really important, family and having the business, but getting everything in prioritized, because someone who's been family challenged for many years, with an elderly father and with my wife having family around the world, you kind of get the balance. You need to get the balance right, and as when family is right in front of you, it's front and center, and it's important. Let's get the priority.
Now let's be honest, because we are two pretty honest guys. How's that working for you this week?
Yes. Well, I sent William upstairs because he's at home, and Loanne upstairs, so it's working really well for this hour of the day.
But you know what? Balance is just. I think sometimes it's the aspiration, isn't it? It's never going to be completely balanced.
No, and it's not necessarily equal. And I think this is one of those things. It's like, it's not 50-50.
Yeah.
It's the what does balance look like right now? And it could be 80% in the business in a week. And the key then is to actually communicate it. The other bit for me is around key ones are like compassion. And I think that's really important especially when you're dealing around family and you're talking around personal aspects of life and everything else. I think it's really important to recognize that not everybody's aware of everything. People have their own challenges, and actually they are their challenges, and it's there to be supportive with them rather than I think one of the things I always talk about finance is to use your judgment, not be judgmental. So when they're asking for help, they're asking for you to use your judgment to help them, not for you to sit in judgment on them.
Ah.
And I think we have to be that. And the other one is we share the one around fun, but also personal growth, and that is that personal growth comes long before business growth.
Yeah.
And I say this to my kids around their own personal growth. Before you want to learn all these things and grow all your knowledge around your schoolwork and everything else, you have to recognize that you don't know the answer to the question that's been posed, and therefore you have to learn. And I think if you take it from that perspective, it moves forward. And the other one, obviously, why we're sitting here today, is collaboration. I am a massive one of working with others, and I say this to the kids: the more you do together, and that's Kit and the school is a good example of this. They don't encourage teamwork, and the most important thing that you can do is work together as a team.
No, you've got to find ways to work together. I mean, the reason we're doing this is because we share a lot of those values.
Yeah, we do.
And number one, we're going to have a little bit of fun along the way, which is always important to me. But mine are very similar, actually. So my one is fairness. So you talk about that transparent communication. I think that's important for us to have that with our clients, have it with our kids, and have it with our partners. I don't think, if I'm being perfectly frank, I don't think I'm always amazing at doing it with Cassie. I'm probably better doing it with the kids and the clients, and that work with a partner bit is a bit of a work in progress consistently. But I think that's probably the same for everybody. The fairness is really important to me. Fun is super important. So you know what? Why spend, particularly if you run your own business, X amount of hours a week doing stuff you're not going to enjoy? When we sit down and engage with a client, our job is to make sure that they get to a point where they are getting up in the morning and doing what they love or doing what they like. And I think we've got a bit of an obligation to go, you know what, this is, we live that life. We try, and not always perfect, but we always try and get to a point where we're having a good time doing it. And certainly stuff like this, I absolutely love. And then my development one is focus on improvement.
Yeah.
So I suppose there's two stories I've got on that. I sponsor a local literary festival every year in Havering, and I just get the opportunity to present, speak to authors. Mark Billingham, who's a crime writer. I got the opportunity to have a really good chat with him a couple of years ago, and introduce him at an event and do all that sort of stuff. So basically, Raymond, it's an excuse for me to speak to interesting people. That's the reason we sponsor it. But there was a guy there called Bobby Seagull. Now, Bobby is a teacher. He still works at a local comprehensive in East London, and he is a maths teacher, and he's also been on TV quite a lot. So he was on University Challenge. He does Monkman and Seagull tours and all sort of stuff about learning and education. And I got to introduce him, took Charlotte along, and a lot of the stuff that he talked about was about growth mindset. Yeah. And I'm a firm believer in that element of you never ever stop learning, and it starts with that attitude that you've always got more to learn. You're always in a position where you've got more to learn. But I'd certainly recommend you pick up Bobby Seagull's book, because he talks about growth mindset a lot in that, and he's a lovely guy. So but the problem was, while Bobby was speaking, because the kids had heard me talk about growth mindset loads, I'm sort of nudging Charlotte. She went, "I know, Dad. I know you've only been talking about it for 5 years." So growth mindset, I think, focus on improving, and I think particularly for business owners, what we see is sometimes that level of stagnation is when people think they've got it sussed. You know, when people think they've got to a point where they know what they're doing, and it's that element of continuous development that's important to us, typically important to our clients, but certainly important to our kids. And then the other one is do well, do good.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we're lucky enough to have opportunities in our life, and we'll certainly have a conversation about purpose at some point today. What do we do to help others?
Yeah.
And what do we do to support others in a way that potentially uses our skills or doesn't? You know, I'm a big advocate of kindness. I think kindness as a trait is, you know, it's not very 80s business where greed was good, but I believe that you can really, really run a good, profitable commercial business and help other people.
Yes, completely.
Those two things. And then I think those values mean that when I get up in the morning, I'm loving life. I'm loving what I do, and I do it with an enthusiasm that hopefully benefits my business. What do you think the problem is with not being clear on your values and bringing it to your family or business?
Well, I wonder how many have values, truly have values, and then and find this with the children, part of it is actually them being true to them and being authentic with them, because too often, and in this house, if you move just a little bit away from what would be considered to be what you're talking about, you get plenty of, excuse me, Daddy, I'd just like to talk to you about something. Yeah, that's not quite how it works. Okay, all right, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Okay. So I think there's an element of, and also I don't think we talk about values particularly a lot, and I don't know whether you find this, with family. So in business, it's almost become one, it almost feels a bit antiseptic because it's a health check thing. Or does the company have values? It's not really necessarily a heart and soul type thing within a business. I still don't think it is even today, even though the world is changing and moving in that direction.
I think that's a really interesting comment. And I was a little bit cynical about values for a long time, because the first time I had conversations about values, and certainly there's loads of big businesses who do get it right, my corporate experience told me values was something you put on a wall and ignored.
Yeah.
But when it's your own business, values are a completely different conversation, I think.
Yes.
Because it you know, they're what you believe.
And more often than not, they are the owner's values first, right?
Yeah.
So people see immediately what you believe and what resonates most with you, and whether you are consistent with those. And I think people are more on the lookout. I know here in this family, if we talk about, well, it was a conversation over lunch earlier, so we talk about fun, and Luann, my wife's sort of looking at me going, and I take it you really are enjoying things at the moment, aren't you? And I'm like, no. Well, you keep telling us we should all be having fun, and there you are. And I'm like, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. You don't need to say any more.
I think they need to be a little bit more compassionate.
That would be, that would be my family being compassionate. We are doing this in the right way for the right reasons.
But you know, the important thing for me is there's no perfection, is there? Do you know what I mean? Perfect is this fallacy that, you know, I think in business we've got an obligation to talk about how damaging that can be, particularly because it's Mental Health Week, you know, as we're recording this. You know, is perfection the thing that sometimes holds us back?
Yes, and I think that's, not to be sexist about this, that's a real big man problem as well. I'm not saying it's not a female challenge. It's a male energy challenge.
Yeah. I agree. I've literally, I mean, Cassie and I, because as you know, I run the business with Cassie, my wife. Cassie and I have just literally come off another call with a new professional introduced to the business that we're going to start to work with, and she's a lawyer who we're going to work with, and interestingly, Cassie and her were far better at having really open, honest, empathetic conversations than I am. So I do think it's a man thing. I do. I do. What do you think business owners need to do to just get clear on their values? Because sometimes I'd imagine it's not that people haven't got values, they haven't really thought about what they are and how to articulate it. I know certainly we didn't for years.
Yeah, in many ways, the fun is in the experience of actually delving,
defining it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think the step that goes beyond that is actually, and what does good behavior look like in relation to those values? So what do they, when you actually show up in that way, what does that actually mean?
How are they manifested, you mean? Yeah.
Because I think we that's where you take them into, and I do think the more you share and the more you engage those around you and you ask them, they'll tell you whether you're showing up, or they're showing up in the way that you want them to, and not in a, and I think this is another kind of man thing, is it not necessarily in a critical way. And it's like, just because you say, I want, it should, every day everything should be in balance and it's completely out of balance, doesn't mean when you get a tap on the shoulder saying, "Oh, why aren't you home for dinner tonight?" that you feel bad. It's like, well, I should be there, shouldn't I? It's like, it's just, people are seeing, and it's then an opportunity then to engage in a conversation about what is actually happening.
Yeah.
So you can actually get to the heart of the challenge that's there, but through your values. Because if you're saying these are what things are important to me, and this is what resonates for us and I think that's then you then go back to, it starts as family. Because if you create that as a family and you take those with you, and you then create your business, and you create your business as the owner, typically through your own values first, what you then see is that you get complete transparency, because it's like, it's totally connected. Now, that doesn't mean that everything works all the time, but actually there's a consistency of journey. So when people see you, they kind of know what to expect.
I mean, certainly consistency of you as an individual, and then people choosing whether to work with you or not. But certainly being clear on values then allows me, when I'm the 99% of the time I'm not being perfect. No, sorry, 99.9% of the time that I'm not being perfect. At least it gives me an aspiration to get to where I'm moving to forwards. But I also think there's sometimes a fear in business about being clear on your values. And I've had this conversation with other business owners who have said to me, I'm really worried about being clear on my values, because if my clients don't particularly share my values, I might put them off.
Yep.
Now, I'm interested in hearing what you think about this, but actually, I've found that it will put some people off, and I'm relaxed about that. Never used to be, funny enough, but I am now. But what it does do is attract clients that you really want to work with. And if you're building a business where, like us, one of our values is fun, you do want to work with people you love working with.
Yes, and it will attract more of the right clients, and those who don't resonate, don't align, who, like any relationship, an old client of mine used to say to me, be really, really clear before you engage anybody in your business, whether it be who you're working with or a client, whether you want them in your life. And having clear values and attracting people through your values will get you the right people in your life. Because once you have those people in your life, it's important that the right people, because they can, a bad client, or a client that doesn't fit, can do so much damage, so much that can really, really unset the apple cart badly. So much more than 5 of the right clients, if you allow them. And that then is not that it's in the business, that then knocks all the way back to, as Loanne was saying to me this morning, when you walk back in the door and it's like, well, can tell what kind of day you've had, because that's what you do. That's what we do, isn't it? We walk in and it's like, wow, that's, and then they experience it, and we kind of try to protect and everything else, but that's, that doesn't work.
Talk to me a little bit. I think that's a really good point. Actually, I think the reality is, I've got an accountant friend of mine who talks about vampire clients, and I had a conversation with her where she said I had to sack one of my vampire clients the other day because they were sucking the mental and physical energy from me. And being selective about who you work with. And it might be, I think we've got a bit more freedom to do that when we work in professional services. Other sectors and industries are slightly different, but choosing who we work with, I think, is really important. Yeah. I know you talk a lot about the relationship that business owners have with their business. Help me understand a bit about what you think about that.
Well, when I talk about this, it's in the, if you think about all relationships, there are things that make a relationship really good. Yeah, the kind of transparency, the communication, the common understanding, the sense of direction, the know where you're going, just that whole way of being. And I think one of the things that business owners so if we take that from a family and a family perspective, how you engage with your family, your wife, your husband, your children, there's a way you really want to be with them. There's things that you want to achieve. There's a way of really, when you're in flow with your family, you just know it, don't you? And I think when we have businesses, we tend to go build a business. Tend to go to work, get it done. We know we've got to get sales in, we've got to do marketing. And I'm always saying to clients, well, actually, first and foremost is what relationship do you want with your business? How do you want your business to show up? Because fundamentally you are inviting, you have chosen to create a business. You could have gone to work to something, you could have worked for someone else, but you have chosen to create a business. So that business is coming into your life, and it's going to be an integral part of your life, a bit like when you had children. So when you bring them into your life, how are they going to come into your life? So that from family first, so it's marriage, have children, children come to the marriage, that creates the family. Business comes into the family. There's not Lord and Master relationship of, oh, well, that business over there needs my time and attention, and that's how I'm going over there by family. No, it comes into the family. So if you're going to have, you need to have the right relationship. And if you can have the right relationship, communication, transparency, all those things, you don't will need to let the business needs to know what is expected of it.
Yeah.
And
the important thing for me is just having clarity of plan. And my starting point, and again, we've spoken about this already, there's no perfect starting place, is there? Because we're all on a journey, and we are where we are, but what we can do is re-navigate based on where we are now to where we want to get to. I think that part of understanding what your business needs to do is understand what life you want.
Yes.
How do you personally want to spend your time? And as you know, I think understanding your number, what financial independence means to you, is so important to help you understand where you are. I mean, the amount of times we've worked with clients who have worked 5 years longer than they need to because they didn't know their number, or worked really hard to build value in their business while their kids were growing up, and missed that time because they didn't know their number and didn't get the balance right. And not just perfect, which is impossible, but completely opposite, because they weren't clear on what their business was planning to achieve. The biggest lesson I learned was a friend of mine. I had this conversation with him a few years ago. He's a financial planner, runs a really good firm up in the Midlands, and he said to me, my dad was an accountant, and he did really well in life financially, but I never saw him.
All right.
And he passed away 4 years ago, and I'm now in a position where I'll never get that time back. And you know what? You hear stories like that, and you go, it's so, that's why the work that we do, giving people clarity, is important. But why we're lucky to hear stories like that, because it allows you to then think about your own life and go, what do I need to change?
And we talk about, so we talk about go to work on and in your business, right? And we say, don't go work in your business, work on your business, design it out the way you want. But we fall for the same, I feel that we fall into the same trap around our way we live our lives. How many people during this period that we've just had have taken the opportunity to sit back and look at their life and how they want life to be, rather than just, and lots of people have gone through living on a day-to-day basis, worrying about what tomorrow's going to bring. We've been doing it for years, not just during this period, for years before, and we'll go on doing it again, which is we don't take a step back and go, actually, what do we want? And part of that is if you're in a business, your business needs to be big, right? If you're not, my business employs 5 people. My business employs 450 people. I must be, 1, a better business owner, 2, know more what I'm doing. And I'm like, well, I've seen lots of large businesses that don't provide lifestyles.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and we are looking, and I think I'm trying to think who said it, and it's life is a single player game. Yeah, it's your life, and you need to be clear about how you want to play. Right? Not, oh, well, that person would like me to do this, that person would like me to do that. It's, hold on a minute, I need to be clear.
What do you want?
What you want first.
Yeah. And sometimes that's about, I mean, I think if I look at our business, my ambition was to build a bigger business than we've got now 10 years ago. And actually, my ladder was up completely the wrong wall, because I've got a really nice business where I work with clients alike and do fun stuff like this, where we share some embarrassing stories about our kids, and actually really enjoy the experience of working, which is what life's about. But it's interesting you talk about the opportunity to change, because I think one of the things that we've noticed in terms of clients coming to us is there are people out there who have used lockdown as a opportunity to reevaluate where they are, reevaluate what their life looks like, plan financially and in their business, and do those 2 elements, and move forward in a tangible way. Funny enough, we did a piece of research, we published a white paper after lockdown, because a lot of the conversations I was having with clients was about what happens next. I'm reevaluating my life, and I'm trying to work out where I am. And it's interesting how much of that was in lockdown focused because of what had happened. And we found about 3/4 of people had changed it. And bear in mind, these are 3/4 of people we'd surveyed. So there's a bit of a bias in terms of our clients answering and new clients answering this question.
Yeah.
But about 3/4 had changed their perspective during lockdown. Now, this is the interesting thing. I wonder how many people have changed their perspective during lockdown, but not done anything about it.
So Hillary Rowland posted something around what do you don't want to go back to, and I think today on LinkedIn, and I think that's a really good question, Chris, because one thing to think about it, another thing to go and actually do it, and I think part of that then means that, and a lot of people feel that they also need to go and do that on their own. Yeah, and they don't. And I think, or how quickly are we going to get back on and I think I sort of posted on Hillary's thing this morning or how quickly do we get back on the hamster wheel? Because it was really nice. We changed. Yeah, we want to be able to spend time with our kids. We want to make all those changes, and then suddenly actually life comes along, and rather than holding back the tide a little bit in a way, or putting more sandbags out so that we don't get our feet wet quite so much, what we find is actually no. What we've built is not strong enough, and actually just washes back through, and we're back on the hamster wheel again.
Yeah. I mean, but then And this is where sort of I believe that knowledge is power. So my favourite story about this is one of my favourite clients is an amazing guy, architect. When we first met, he was introduced to me. He was out in Doha. He was building football stadiums out in the Middle East. And we sat down. He said, I've come to get myself financially organised. I've got all these bits. Can you help me get organised? And we had a conversation about what life looked like for him. And he said, my life's amazing, Chris. My life's amazing. I build these amazing structures. It's interesting work. I live in this expat community, which is great fun in the Middle East. He was having a great time. I was like, great. What we'll do then is get you organised, understand where you sit financially. If you're loving life, don't change it, right? If you're loving life and you think you're having a good time, don't change it. But get prepared financially so that if you do need to change it, you can. Had a review the following year. I think we did it by video conference, and I was in my rainy office in Essex, and he showed me his swimming pool, and it made me really jealous. But the following year, he was back in London, so we got together and had a chat. And he said to me, "They've changed my contract at work, and I'm not building football stadiums anymore. I'm now building tower blocks.
Okay,
and it's not fun. I'm not enjoying it anymore." Now, I'd been doing his cash flow modelling to tell him that he'd never run out of money again.
Yeah.
The conversation then went, look, you know you're never going to run out of money again. You love your work, but you only love the projects that excite you.
Yeah.
Why not choose to only do the exciting projects? He went, I'm doing that. Finished his contract the following week, and now he only does work he loves because he knows work is optional. So that was 2016. We had that conversation. 2017, 2018 is sort of life's good for him. 2018, we had our review meeting, and I say to him, we know you're never going to run out. Tell me about your bucket list. Tell me what's on there that you really want to do. He said, well, I need to give it some thought. So it went away. We had some email correspondence during the year, and he bounced into the meeting in 2019, Raymond. Right, he went, right, I've got it. I'm going shark diving off of the coast of Cape Town, and it's there's no cage. I was like, right, hold on. When I said what's on your bucket list, should we just like have a bit of a sense check in terms of what's safe or not? He went, no, apparently I didn't know this. There's an island off of South Africa where there's plankton eating sharks that you can dive with.
Wow, okay.
Naturally. And he'd found it and he loved it. So that clarity of where you sit financially moved him from a job he loved and he carried on doing until he didn't anymore, to a point where he had the clarity to go, I don't need this. I'm going to move on to the next stage of my life. And then to a point where he's going, right, I need to tick some of this stuff off. And I think the power of that clarity, both in somebody's personal finances and in the direction of their business, is so important.
So do we find that kind of conversation happens? Do you find it happens kind of more later in life? Because one of the things I would say is early on in life, that's the kind of mindset and experience you want. Our kids are going to have so many different options. They're doing jobs we don't even think exist right now, and they're going to be finding their way through life for the next 60 or 70 years, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I think the reality is, if you've got more time in your plan, you've got more options.
Yeah.
if you've got more time, you've got more options. And having your own clear plan of what your life looks like. And Raymond, I love the idea of having sort of, why do we wait until the end of our lives to have this retirement thing?
Yeah.
Why don't we have these mini breaks in the middle where we have a year off and go and do what we I think that like our kids are going to have such a different career.
Yeah.
That it will be interesting, won't it? But having clarity on what you want in your life, that's the starting point. So you can build everything around it.
And going back to the point earlier about parents, as parents, we need to remember that, because it's a bit like, we want you to be a doctor, an accountant, a dentist. Yeah. It's going to be their life. And for us, so good financial management, good life skills, all of those things that we want our children to have, they are going to have to use those skills in a way that works for them. And for us as parents to actually support them. And, if they want to go traveling around the world for a year and and that's what they've chosen to do, and it's part of how they grow and how they develop. Brilliant. When they walk in the door and they go, well, I'm going to be an artist and I've not got any, and we go, well, artists don't make any money. And they're like, well, no, that's what I love to do. And that's where my passion is. And I'm going to see if I can make a career out of it. As the parent, you've got to go, okay, let's think of this through about, have you got created the platform of security for you? Have you thought through what actually good looks like moving forward, rather than saying, well, I'd still prefer you go back to university and be the dentist.
Yeah, I mean, I think the world has changed, hasn't it? I don't know whether, and it's weird because my daughter will certainly be going to university. She's picking universities out now. She's stressing about the exams, and that's the path she wants to follow. Partially because she wants the life experience of going to university. Yep. Cass is not happy, Raymond, that she's picked the other side of the country. I mean, she's going to, like, she wants to go to Glasgow, and we're sort of down south. But I think she wants that independence and that university experience. Yeah. But I think what we need to consider is whether our education system at the minute is fit for purpose in the modern world. Because we have got a bit of a challenge around how we educate our kids formally in school, for an industrial world when we're in the technology age. And I don't know whether we've again, I've got a massive amount of respect for all teachers who do an amazing job, but the like any large institutional organisation, things move slowly, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Whereas the world's moved forward fast, I'm not convinced that we teach our kids the skills they really need. I mean, I don't know what skills they're going to need for the next 30 years. But certainly, I'm not convinced the skills that we currently teach at school are going to benefit them that much.
But then that goes back to your point earlier about the educational program you do with a local school. I think there's a real way in which parents and schools can work together. And I think one of the things which I will say about business owners is that there's so many skills within being, as you talked about, being an entrepreneur and being a business owner, that actually are great life skills for our children. And actually having that conversation around the dinner table. So we talk about, there's nothing worse than having had a bad conversation with a client. But my boys have the same conversation with their friends, yeah? They fall out with their friends, and
it's relationships,
isn't it? And they're looking at looking at me saying, well, how do I handle the challenges that I find? And I'm looking at them going, I know you're looking at me. They look at me the way I look after my dad. They look at all those things. They're looking, and we need to model. This is the bit. We need to model for our children what we want them to. And that means if you have a business, you can have a business and have a great family life. It's not an either or.
That can backfire, though. I've got to tell you a story, right? So yesterday, I'm sitting down with Charlotte. Charlotte has got to do a presentation on dystopian literature for her A-level. So let me tell you a story about that. And this is one of the downsides of being a business owner.
Yeah.
Sometimes bringing too much home.
Yeah.
I came home yesterday. Charlotte and I were sitting down. She went, "Dad, I've got some really exciting to tell you. I've got to do a presentation on dystopian novels. So like 1984 and Brave New World and The Giver. And I love dystopian fiction.
Oh, The Giver, I know.
The Giver's good. The
Yeah.
Giver's good. The one that you want to read, if you, which is just an absolutely amazing insight into, it was written in the 70s, but really insightful about the way that actually culture has moved forward. They're quite insightful, some of these dystopian novels, because they do sort of foreshadow things that have happened since, particularly Big Brother and stuff like that. But yeah, so I like dystopian fiction. So I got really excited and said, "Oh, you're amazing, you're doing a presentation on dystopian fiction." Sorry, one thing I want to mention, Fahrenheit 451 is the book that by Ray Bradbury is an amazing story.
I know the name.
Yeah, so that's worth watching. So anyway, Charlotte says to me, "I need to do this presentation on dystopia. Can I show it to you?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm happy to help if I can." She went, "I've done it on Teams. I've collaborated with some other members of my class. We've all put like sort of stuff in. They've got a shared workspace, and so they're learning these team working skills as part of their education." Plugged the laptop into the TV so she can present it properly and just show me. And it was a bit text heavy. It was, to be fair to her, bless her, she's only 17. She doesn't present that much. It was a bit death by PowerPoint.
Right. Okay.
And my feedback was actually more images, less story. More images, less text. Let's illustrate, show not tell, that sort of stuff we learn when we talk about our own businesses. And then I went off on a tangent, Raymond, and just took over the presentation, right? So it was like, right, this is what you do. You go, imagine a world where books are burned and like all this sort of stuff. She went, "It's a bit cheesy, Dad. I don't want to do that." And I was like, okay. She went, "I think I'll stick with my one." And I was like, when you've overstepped the line a bit. That was me. So I think bringing your business skills to home is important, and a bit of enthusiasm is important. Sometimes your kids don't want it, do they?
No, they definitely don't want it. They definitely don't. And it's a bit like when you coach, and it's like, "You're not coaching me, are you?" No, of course I'm not. Don't be silly. Why would I do something silly like that? Well, don't, because I don't need it.
Why are you asking that question again?
Yeah.
Why was the question again? And what tips would you give? Somebody's, because we typically work with clients who are along the line of their journey. They're not typically starting from scratch.
Yeah.
What tips would you share in terms of sort of building the business for them and navigating it in a way that works for them and their values and their families, if they're already halfway through or already 5 years in?
Well, that. In some ways, that's actually a really good time to do it, because what my experience has been is that they've tried and done so much. Some things have worked, some things haven't worked. Typically, family has been, well, maybe it's just been my experience, but typically family's been the one bit that has taken a hit, or they've not quite got that balanced. So actually getting them to take a little bit of time out and actually it is challenging when you're on the roundabout and you're going anyway and you can't stop it, to step away, but actually to create a little bit of time. And I always say to clients, even if it's just an hour, just make sure you get that consistent bit of time in, and actually just take the opportunity to focus on what you want, on the bits that you really want to get out of it in terms of what you want the future would look like, and talk to your family about it. So, and actually make it fun. don't make it heavy. I think that's the other bit, is that having a conversation about what you want can be really, really heavy. And someone I used to coach with was saying to me, well, you've got to be really child appropriate. And I'm like, you can have a lot of fun with your children.
Yeah.
And you can make it a really good, fun game that where if you were talking about holidays, or we want to travel 2 times a year, right? Okay, tell you what, why don't just everybody write down what 2 times a year looks like and where we'd go? And one of them might be somewhere local and meeting family. One might be going away on our own, but just really enjoy. But one of the things I do because I also coach people that are coming out of corporate life into starting their own business. And with those people, I say to them, whatever you do, start as you mean to go on.
Yeah.
So the moment you have the thought in your head that you want to leave your job, not when you've left, not when you're leaving, when you have the thought in your head, that's the point in time to start planning it and do it together. Understand, you talk about designing your life and having plan A and what plan B looks like, and knowing that if it all goes to hell in a basket, we know what we can deal with that and how we're going to cope with that. Because if you do it way back then, because I was thinking like 12 months long, probably more than 12 months before I actually ended up leaving my job, you actually create momentum going into your new venture where you've already put in place a load of the foundations that you need to.
Well, it's those stepping stones, isn't it? So you're not hitting it and you're sitting there day one going, what do I do? It's those elements. But I think the interesting thing is, my philosophy is never too late to have a really robust plan in place.
Mm-hmm.
So the phrase that I like is the best time to plan was 10 years ago. The second best time to plan is now.
Yeah.
Because we can't turn back time.
No.
We are where we are, but having a robust plan that you can move forward with from today is the important point, isn't it?
Yes, it is. You're absolutely right. There's no bad time to do it. Right? If you only are where you are, you can't. You're right. You can't. The key thing about the past, and I think what we actually do is we bring too much baggage from the past with us. Oh my God, I had all these bad experiences, all these things went wrong. And actually what we want to do when we're planning going forwards, we want to go back into our past and take the bits that are relevant, the learnings that are relevant, the experiences that are relevant, that have helped us to, which will have or will help us to move forwards. But we get bogged down in fact, well, I planned once before and the plan didn't happen, rather than saying, well, actually, what's the learning from the plan not happening that I can put in place today that means going forwards, I've got a better chance of it actually happening.
And it's really interesting, because I think for me, and we've spoken about this before, about that ownership of time being more important than the money to a certain extent. I mean, there's a guy I know, really good business coach, and he's got a phrase where he says, "How do kids spell love?" And he'll say TIME. Now, if I ask my 17-year-old, she'd probably want less TIME at the minute than others. But you know what? Yeah, I suppose one of the advantages for me of being a business owner is having the flexibility of that time. So I can like a couple of years ago when we could do this sort of thing, Charlotte and I, and I'm getting emotional thinking about it. We had 10 days where we toured Japan. So we went on this amazing trip to Japan, Kyoto, Tokyo, and they're memories that I'll remember forever. Do you know what I mean? It was just Charlotte and I, just this tour. And one of the things that we're planning now is a trip round, not in 2021, 2022, a trip around Europe, potentially starting in Moscow and going around the Baltics and stuff like that, because I just want to create those memories and that thing. And I think sometimes we, certainly when we're talking to people leave it too late because they still think they should work as hard as they can up to a certain age and then enjoy life. But you're losing all of those relationship dynamics with your kids, aren't you?
You are, and that's a really lovely thought though, when you think about how the children Bell love, because that's it. And you say it needs time, and it is, because you can't, you're absolutely right, you can't get it back. You can, and it's then finding those, especially as they get older. So that teenage years, and as they start to create their own independence and do their own thing, it's finding the way to engage with them in a way and be together in a way that works for them and actually makes the most of the time you have together. Because I think that one of the things, and it's quality time, because we've all done it, we've all sat in, we've all been together as a family for the whole day, never said anything, actually been disengaged, not active together, yeah, almost, kind of. So it's not only time, it's quality time, and that does actually require a lot of planning and focus.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I think we've covered off pretty much everything we had on my list and more.
And more, yeah. I was looking at
more.
This, wow.
We've covered off quite a lot. So thank you for our conversation today. I've absolutely loved it. I don't know whether any of it's particularly specific, but actually I think we've highlighted some really interesting points that people are going to benefit from.
No, it's been really good. It's been really good. I've really enjoyed it, Chris. Thank you very much.